Today's video, let's analyze the principle of female mate choice. Ancient men and dozens of women have relations. It is possible to lead to many of the women pregnant. The benefits of reproduction is obvious, but women's parental investment is far greater than men. An ancient woman, even with dozens of men, have relations, but can only give birth to one child, and the risk of pregnancy and childbirth are borne by her. If a woman chooses a man at will, and pregnant with the man's child, but the man is unwilling to provide living resources, romantic, lazy, and abusive, the woman's life became a hell of a difficult moment. The birth of the child due to the lack of protection, the survival rate greatly decreased, at least 10,000 steps. Even if the mother worked hard to pull the child up, the child miraculously survived to the age of inheritance reception, but because the father is not responsible, does not provide resources, then the lack of resources of the child is difficult to find objects to carry on the family. So over thousands of generations, women have evolved a preference for men who are committed and capable of taking responsibility. There's a species of shrike, and before the breeding season, the males start hoarding all kinds of food, and things like feathers and cloth, and they hang them all up in plain sight in their territory, and there are about 100 of them. When the females arrive, they visit their territories one by one, and pair up with the most resident males. The researchers took some male caches of food and placed them in the territory of other males. As a result, these orphaned males immediately have no female choice and become solitary. Women's preference for men is very consistent with that of shrike birds, that is, they pay great attention to men's economic resources. In a 1939 study, men and women were asked to rate 18 personal traits on how important each trait was to choosing a mate. Which traits were irrelevant and which were essential? Women ranked economic prospects as important, while men only listed them as a strength, and women were twice as likely as men to value economic conditions. I thought that 38 years was too early, when the economy was underdeveloped and people were more conservative, but then the same survey was conducted again in the late 1960s and early 1970s, and despite the sexual revolution in American society at that time, the results did not change, and someone began to repeat the study in the 1980s, and the results did not change, and these surveys were all conducted in the United States. Some might say that this is something that only happens in capitalist societies. The researchers then surveyed 37 cultures on 6 continents and 5 islands, from urban Brazilians to poor South Africans, from monogamous to polygamous societies, from capitalist to socialist, from Catholic to Jewish. Again, women are far more likely than men to want to marry a man for financial resources. There is a structural resource deficiency theory, which holds that in a patriarchal society, men control resources, and then control or influence women through resources, and men unite together to oppress women. Women are excluded from resources, and they can only choose men who are powerful and can make money, because this is the main way for them to obtain resources. Men do not value economic resources as much as women do when choosing a mate, because men have already mastered a lot of resources, which is only half true. Men do control a lot of resources, and they do control or influence women through resources. The society needs to make efforts to improve women's economic conditions, but men unite together to oppress women. This view is not based on any facts. Just as female competition focuses on looks, male competition focuses on resources. Because female ancestors desired men to have more resources and rejected those who lacked them, men purged their motivation to try to control resources in order to attract a mate, and men's efforts to control resources first came at the expense of other men, who stole resources from other men and pushed them out of positions of power, leaving the other men behind and stepping on them. Male competition is also very vicious, and in all social and cultural settings, men die faster and earlier than women. Men are 400% more likely to die as adults than women are more likely to take risks, are 3 times more likely to be murdered, and commit suicide at 3 times the rate of women. Although the difference in lifespan is influenced by a lot of factors, some of it is due to competition between men for resources. It is not that men who are favored by the opposite sex are more likely to take risks, because they do not have the resources to fulfill their wishes, so violence is their resource. They are more likely to gamble, rob, steal, sexually assault, rape. In 1972, the unemployment rate in Detroit was 11%. But 41% of the adult male murderers that year were unemployed. The city's unmarried rate was 43%, and 69% of male victims and 73% of male victims were unmarried. The common characteristics of murderers include low approval of the opposite sex, no job, no marriage, and young people generally concentrated between 16 and 30 years old. Even if they do not take risks, far more men than women work in high-risk industries in order to access resources, and women are excluded from resources and can only choose powerful men who can earn money. Evolutionary psychologists did a study that directly contradicted this claim by asking the salaries of the women they interviewed to compare the differences in mating preferences of women with different income levels. Survey results in many countries around the world are the same. High-income women not only do not choose low-income men, but are more choosy than ordinary women. The higher the income of women, the more they want their spouse to have a higher position and social status, and women with superior family conditions also attach more importance to the family. All in all, high marriage often occurs in human society, but high marriage is rare. Now here's the problem: women value resources, but men can't display their resources as clearly as shrike birds, and women can't tell at a glance whether a man has more financial resources or not. Right. So they look at a number of clues. The first is high social status. If a man has a higher social status, he will naturally have more resources. Today, there are still some primitive tribes in the world, such as the Tiwi indigenous people in Australia, the Yanomama tribe in Venezuela, the Ahui tribe in Paraguay, etc. All primitive tribes have leaders and elders and other important people. These important people have strong power, high prestige, a lot of resources. Of course, they also have more wives and sexual partners. But in the modern world, class is blurred, and women pay attention to characteristics that are closely linked to social status, such as education, and women find a lack of education highly undesirable in a potential husband. In addition, women also prefer to marry doctors, lawyers, professors, successful entrepreneurs, senior officials, etc., and will avoid men who are easily dominated by other men and who fail to win the respect of the group. In one interesting example, an evolutionary psychologist was eating in a restaurant and heard 4 women talking, and all of them were complaining about the lack of suitable men around, but the women were surrounded by a large group of male waiters, none of whom were wearing wedding rings. In other words, they do not mean that there are no suitable men, but that there are no suitable men of a certain social status. The professional status of waiters is not high, and it is not in the scope of consideration of these women. In short, women often regard social status as a necessity rather than a luxury when choosing a mate. There is an American folk song that goes like this: "If I were a carpenter and you were a lady, would you risk everything to marry me and have children for me?" Evolutionary psychologists tell us the answer is no, which makes it harder for highly educated women to find a mate. Generally speaking, more women go to college than men. For example, in the class of 2020 in China, 52.04% of college students are female and 47.96% are male, although the difference seems small. However, these women are not willing to condone those who are less educated men, and men do not care about these aspects, regardless of education or earning power. Many men only value women young and beautiful. In other words, highly educated women not only have to compete with other highly educated women, but also compete with women who have little education but are found attractive by men, so the difficulty of choosing a mate comes up immediately. All in all, just like most women look average, beauty is very rare. Most men's social status is also average. Powerful men are also very rare, so women will also measure the ability of men to obtain resources through other clues. One of the most important is the ambition. If two men are at the same starting line, diligent men are usually more lazy, less motivated men have higher education, higher social status and higher annual salaries. The survey showed that women generally rated ambition and hard work as important and essential qualities, rated men who lacked ambition as the least attractive, and when a man because of a lack of career goals or lazy state, women are likely to terminate a long-term relationship with the man. In addition to this, women also place a high value on men's intelligence, and those with higher intelligence not only get into better schools, but also get into higher paying positions. It is clearly one of the useful indicators for predicting the possession of economic resources. Moreover, high intelligence also means good genes, a precious resource that can be passed on to future generations, but this is more abstract than social status, and it is not directly visible at all. A sense of humor is an indicator of intelligence, because it may indicate creativity and complex and efficient cognitive skills. And a sense of humor also helps people build and maintain social relationships, and it may be useful for getting resources, but there are two kinds of humor. One is making humor, including telling jokes, making one-liners. The other is understanding humor, that is, knowing where the punchline is. In long-term relationships, women prefer men who produce humor, and men prefer women who understand their humor. However, evidence for humor is lacking and more research is needed. Since women value intelligence in men, unintelligent performance will naturally not be liked by women, such as not picking up on subtle hints from others, not understanding jokes that everyone else understands, saying the wrong thing at the wrong time, not grasping the point when listening to explanations, and sometimes stubbornly arguing when they are clearly wrong. The above inherent characteristics are more or less related to a man's resource acquisition ability, but the problem is that just as a man finds a woman with high reproductive value, there is no guarantee that the child born by the woman is his, and a woman finds a man with high resource acquisition ability, there is no guarantee that the man will devote all his resources to himself and his children. Some unreliable men will wonder, their ability to obtain resources is so strong, why do you want to hang on a tree, rather than let a woman give me more children? I would rather find more women to give me children. Because of the huge asymmetry in the cost of having children, women have also evolved three strong preferences: reliability, stability, and seeking commitment. Imagine such a scene: an ancient man in the hunt suddenly decided to put on a bad sleep, the expected food cannot be obtained. Or he hit a large piece of meat, but met on the way to let himself fall in love with the woman, so decided to give this meat all to the woman. This is a man who is unreliable. An emotionally unstable man may be self-centered and monopolizing resources, and may be very possessive, take up a lot of his wife's time, show above average sexual jealousy, and get agitated when his wife talks to others. Acting indiscreet, such as not arriving on time at the appointed time, is more likely than emotionally stable people to be depressed, cry at small setbacks, and may be abusive, both verbal and physical. In short, in order to avoid incurring these costs and to stabilize access to resources, women prefer men who are reliable and emotionally stable. It's even more important to seek commitment, and what works best for a woman is a man who loves her so much that he's willing to do everything he can for her and her children. It is in men's best interest to devote only a fraction of their resources to each woman. As a result, women hate it when men don't show their emotions, and are more likely to review and analyze their date's conversations and actions with their friends in an effort to discover his true thoughts, intentions, emotions, and motivations. In the dating phase, 25% of women complain that their partner ignores their emotions, according to the survey. That number rose to 30% in the first year of marriage and 59% in the fourth year. Very few men feel the same way. In contrast, 30% of men complain that their partner is too emotional in the dating phase, 34% in the first year of marriage, and 49% in the fourth year of marriage. There are a number of strategies that women use, consciously or unconsciously, to induce men to commit, one of which is moodiness. Because moodiness represents the need to soothe, men have to temporarily put aside their own affairs to help women get out of a bad mood. This significantly increases the cost to men, and by how men respond to this cost, women can assess whether men love them or not. If men are not willing to pay this small price, it indicates that they are low in commitment. If men are willing to pay this price, and are willing to buy gifts or spend time with themselves, it indicates that they are high in commitment to the relationship. In short, the need for time and attention between the sexes has a huge difference. Women always try to monopolize their partner's investment, but many men will refuse this monopoly, the energy allocated to other places, which is one of the main reasons for couples conflict. Women often complain that the man does not buy gifts for themselves, do not spend time with them. Men complain that their partners demand too much time from them. I think this can more or less explain why many women hate the object to play games. I play games is a reflection of not making progress in the first place. It also means that a lot of time and energy is invested in other places, and the same goes for other hobbies. All this evidence also explains the question of why women generally prefer older men in long-term mating. In ancient societies, men's physical fitness and hunting skills increased with age, and although physical fitness decreased with age, it was nothing compared to the compensation brought by the increase in knowledge, patience, skill and wisdom. Even in modern society, for the most part, status and wealth increase with age. While men in their 20s are less likely to be bosses, executives, or officials, older men may also be more mature, emotionally stable, and reliable in providing resources. In international studies, all women have a general preference for men older than themselves. Those women in their 20s are usually married to men 2 or 3 years older. Here is a question. Men's wealth generally peaks in their 40s and 50s. Why don't young women indulge in men in their 40s and 50s? The reason may be that if he is much older than himself, the man may not have much time left and is less likely to contribute resources continuously, and the older age may also have mismatched values, which can lead to arguments. In addition, the quality of male sperm also decreases with age, leading to birth defects. In general, in terms of age, women prefer men who are a little older and have a great future than men who are half buried in the ground, but there are exceptions. Women sometimes choose a much younger man as a mate, but mostly because older women and younger men lack bargaining power in all markets. Older women can't get the attention of high-powered men, and younger men have low mate value, so they group together. There are also women who have achieved higher status and resources, and they choose much younger men, but this is rare, and even though they may have short-term sex with poor boys, they may still choose older men as marriage partners when they plan to settle down. In addition to the ability to acquire resources and the stable supply of resources, women also have a preference for external characteristics when choosing a mate. Many female employees will face a problem. Men have absolute advantages in the body and are likely to commit violence or sexual assault on themselves, so one of the benefits women get in long-term mate selection is the physical protection provided by men. A tall man as a spouse can protect yourself from assault and sexual assault. Therefore, most women believe that short men are not desirable as long-term spouses. In dating revelations, tall men always receive more approval than short and average height men. In addition to height, women also like to drive away men in the shape of a V shape, which is an inverted triangle with broad shoulders and narrow hips. Men with this body type have stronger upper body strength, and because men prefer to seek short-term sexual relations, women wearing tight and revealing clothes can be very damaging to men, but men wearing tight and revealing clothes can be a turn-off for women, because this dress may indicate that they are interested in casual sex, and women are disgusted by casual sex. Therefore, although women like a good body, they feel that men who dress conservatively are more attractive. In a word, they should dress thin and strip off meat. That's how women choose a mate over the long term. In summary, women prefer men who have access to resources and are willing to commit, who are tall and athletic, so male competition tends to focus on these aspects. Men often brag about their accomplishments, show off tangible resources and earning power, drive expensive cars, and tell women how important they are at work. And often envy others have money, denigrate the resources and status of competitors. Men will tell women that a competitor is poor, lacks ambition, or makes him look awkward, as a sign that his intelligence is low. Or to outperform competitors in sports, demonstrating their strength and belittling their strength and athletic skills. Then there is the short-term choice of women. For researchers, why women want a short-term after has been a mystery, because once women are known as the reputation of debauchery, it is likely that the value of the spouse is greatly reduced, resulting in the inability to marry. Even in relatively open societies, misbehavior can cause reputational damage to women. Second, short-term strategies may lead to pregnancy and childbirth without any male investment. If a married woman has an affair, from the perspective of reproduction, the woman not only wastes precious time on the affair, but also her husband is likely to immediately recover the investment. In addition, her children may have different fathers, and the blood relationship between the children will be more distant. There will also be more competition between compatriots. Finally, the risk of sexually transmitted diseases is much higher for women than for men. So short-term mate selection is a very costly thing for women, so evolutionary psychologists have made 5 assumptions about women's short-term mate selection. First, change the spouse. Sometimes the husband will stop the supply of resources, or even start to abuse his wife and children, then his value as a spouse will be greatly reduced. In this case, the ancient woman needed help from a short-term partner, either by having an affair and causing the marriage to break down, or by simply changing the short-term partner to a permanent partner. Second, long-term goals. The assumption is that women can use short-term relationships to determine whether a man has undesirable flaws, whether two people are compatible and so on, and if they are compatible, then they can turn it into a long-term relationship. The third resource, ancient women through short-term sexual relations. Immediate access to meat and various items, but also to conceal the identity of the father of the child, in order to obtain resources from multiple men, or a fixed spouse is not around, from the short-term sexual partner to obtain life protection. Fourth, genetic benefits. Short-term partners may have better genes than fixed partners, so this is also called sexy son. If a woman has sex with a very attractive man, then she is likely to have a handsome son, and her son will have a chance to attract more women and have more children, which means more grandchildren for her mother. Fifth, spouse manipulation. Women will use the affair to retaliate against her husband's betrayal, to prevent her from continuing to cheat, or to make her husband feel that other men are covetously for her wife. To increase the husband's input, and then to do various studies to test these hypotheses. In addition to the mate manipulation hypothesis, all 4 hypotheses of mate change, long-term purpose, access to resources, and genetic gain have been proved. Starting with changing spouses, there are studies that look at 28 potential benefits women can gain from an affair. According to women, having an affair leads them to break up with their current partner sooner and have a chance of finding a man who is more desirable than their current partner, including a man who spends more time with him, or a man who is more successful and financially prosperous. Another study showed that women had affairs mainly when they were unhappy with their existing relationship. This is different from men, who can have affairs even if they are satisfied with their marital status. In short, the mortality rate of ancient men is quite high, and it is very likely that they will hunt and never return, or die in tribal wars, or be a leader today and be deposed tomorrow, and all resources will be confiscated. If women in these situations have a spare child in advance, they can quickly change partners without having to start from scratch. Talking about long-term goals, in one study, the number one reason women reported a short-term relationship was that I was attracted to the guy because of his attractive looks, and the number two reason was that I wanted to be with him for the long term, and I thought that a short-term sexual relationship would lead to something long-lasting. Most women are less attracted to men who are in a committed relationship in the short term, which means they may just be looking for pleasure. In contrast, men choose a partner for the short term regardless of whether the other person has a boyfriend or not. In short, some women will use short-term mate selection as a means to develop a formal relationship. Then there's the resource hypothesis for traits that modern women value in a short-term lover. 1. Spend a lot of money on them right from the start. 2. Give them gifts in the first place. 3. Extravagant lifestyle. Generosity, that is to say, women do not like thrifty and stingy lovers, because thrifty means that the man is not willing to put resources into them immediately. In a long-term relationship, women do not want the other person to spend lavishly. The gain of economic resources from short-term sexual relations is most thoroughly demonstrated by engaging in prostitution. But most women would prefer to get long-term benefits from a man with resources, rather than exchanging them for temporary items. So, when a current partner loses their job and a woman meets a man with better financial prospects, they are more likely to cheat. Finally, there is the genetic gain hypothesis that highly desirable men are usually willing to have a fling as long as women don't ask for commitment. The researchers found that women were more critical of physical attractiveness in a short-term partner than in a long-term partner, placing a higher value on attractive appearance, physical symmetry, attraction to other women, as well as bravery, confidence, strength, and humor in a short-term partner. After the male ejaculates, the female will expel 35% of the sperm, but if the female reaches orgasm, only 30% will retain more sperm. The 5% difference is small, but if the difference persists over thousands of generations, this adds up to strong selection pressure, meaning that women are more fertile during orgasm. According to Kinsey's research, women reach orgasm almost twice as often when they have sex with their lovers as when they are with their husbands. In general, the female orgasm seems to be a selection device, which can be used to choose which man will eventually fertilize his egg cells, and this man is not necessarily the husband. In the UK, a national sexology survey interviewed 3,679 women and asked women to record their menstrual cycles, the time they had sex with their husbands, and the time they had trysts if they had a lover. The results showed that women who had affairs often scheduled trysts near ovulation, the time when they were most likely to get pregnant, in most cases without realizing it. In short, the good genes hypothesis is also supported by a lot of evidence. Changing spouses, long-term goals, access to resources, and genetic gains may be one or more factors that contribute to women's short-term mating motivations. That's all for this video. Thanks.